Is an Audible Wednesday. Kim Bokamper here with you. James Walker from ESPN.com joining us. You can check him out at James Walker, at James Walker NFL, and on a lot of different platforms.
Facebook, Twitter.
All over the place. You cover everything. Cover every bit. Part of the business these days. You have to be a social media convert and be involved in all that stuff these days to do your job.
You're right. It's crazy. When I was in college in 2001, it feels like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. But we didn't learn social media. They didn't have social media at that time to teach us, so we kind of had to learn on the fly as we go.
Well, social media is about, what, a 5 or 6 year phenomenon for us right now. I mean, I remember when Twitter came out, you just kind of laughed at it because it's a stupid thing, but here we are. And so anyway, it's become part of our lexicon. It's become part of our lives and everything. So, James, we're inside the bubble, and lucky you are because we're in a deluge out there outside the bubble. So we're nice and dry, nice and cool in here, so a good spot to be. And for the fans out here watching, this is what the bubble looks like when there's no one in here practicing. I know you don't get to see when they're in here practicing either, so one way or another, it's in the bubble. Hey, let's get to the business at hand, and let me get your take on this football team through 3 games, where they're at, and maybe more importantly, can they shake out of it and shake out of it in a hurry?
Yeah, I'm very surprised with the way that they're losing, and that the offense has become a big liability on the team. And it's actually the defense that's carrying the team. This is a defense that hasn't given up more than 20 points all season.
Yep.
So to me, that's 3 straight winning caliber performances that the defense has put together. You assume any offense can score 21, 24, 23 points. That's about the average amount. But this offense is averaging 8.3 points per game. I mean, I'm completely shocked by that with all the weapons that they have, the Jarvis Landrys, the Jay Ajayi, Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, Julius Thomas. You can go on and on. I'm just surprised of the fact that side of the ball is such a huge liability through the first 3 games. So, can they fix it? They should be able to fix it. They have the talent, to fix it. And maybe some home cooking this week could be the difference. But, you wonder whether or not this defense is really that legit, because they're playing some legitimate football right now. And they're only allowing 3.1 yards per carry after they were 30th in the league in rushing last year. So can that hold for 16 games? And if that's the case and the offense turns around, then there's some reason to be optimistic. But Adam Gase brought up a good point. I asked him about, how he feels about the defense. He said he feels like he's wasting their good performances because, at some point the defense is going to lay an egg at some point. They don't go 16 straight games playing at an elite clip. So, what happens when the defense gives up 30 points that week? Do they lose 30-0, or can they win a shootout 35-30? So I think, whether or not this offense wakes up could be a telltale sign of whether it's going to be a decent season for the Dolphins or a bad season.
I don't think there's any question about that. You're watching the Audible. James Walker, Kim Bokamper with you. We're presented by UMiami Health. The turnaround. This is a football team, and don't like to use excuses, but it's been a tough travel team. They lose one game. They're behind everybody in as far as games. They, in essence, lose their bye week in the first week of the season. But the thing I look at and the hope I have for this football team this week is this is their home opener.
Yeah.
I mean, we're 5, but this is week 5 in the NFL season, and they're just now having
their
home opener, last team to have a home game. So, and being around the National Football League, having had the opportunity to play, I know how important that home opener is. I know how you get jacked up for it. So I'm kind of hoping that gives them that extra edge to get over the top. And James, I think there's a lot of people, I can't speak for you, but feel like this team may be one win away from just kind of, take the weight off our shoulders. Now let's go and do what we need to do, very much like we saw last year with this football team when they started that 6-game winning streak, when they beat Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden you saw a whole different football team. Not that they were dominating anybody, but they played that 60-minute type of game, won games late, made big plays. And, James, that's one of the things that this team is lacking right now on both sides of the football, and certainly offensively, big plays. I mean, we really haven't seen any big plays on either side of the football. Defensively, you talk about how well they're playing. One takeaway from the defensive side of the football, and offensively they've given the ball away a handful of times that have caused problems. So, they need to get that taken care of and become and then you go back and the surprising thing about the offense that we saw during the preseason understands team you're playing they're showing a vanilla defense, But we saw big plays. We saw Devontae deep down the field. We saw Kenny Stills.
Yep.
We saw big runs. We saw a lot of different things. And I think that's what makes it so hard for fans and people to watch this team right now and be so stagnant on offense when there was so much hope for a big play, big points. We're talking about, 25 points a game, 27 points. An offense that was going to put up those kind of numbers, and just you were saying, most people were more concerned that the defense was going to be the one that were going to be over their end of the bargain, and not even worried about the offense.
Yeah, and what's interesting that I saw with the New York Jets, I think they may have started a trend. They kept who's 33, Adams, their rookie safety. They kept him deep. Over top of Devontae Parker, and he was all over the field. He has great range. Not every team has a safety like that, but once a smart defensive coordinator does that and figures out an offense, everybody's going to watch that film. Everybody's going to copy. Everybody's going to take away the big deep play, from the Dolphins. So how do the Dolphins counter that? Do they run Jay Ajayi? Do they do more short passes underneath? Do they still test the third level of the field and throw it deep? That's something that they have to figure out. It's up to the Dolphins now to counter because the book is out on how to stop, this year's group, at least with Jay Cutler at quarterback. Everybody knows Jay Cutler has a strong arm. He likes to throw to the third level, likes to throw to the second level, but teams are forcing him to throw to that first level. He's only throwing less than 6 yards per attempt, which is not his MO. He has over 7 yards per attempt, for his career. He's more of a deep ball thrower, but teams are taking away that. Now it's up to the Dolphins to counter. Now it's up to the Dolphins to figure it out. They haven't figured it out just yet, but you look at the Titans' defense, they gave up 57 points last week. So it's kind of, a team that was shut out the week before versus a team that gave up 57 points. Something has to give in this game. So you figure with the home cooking, maybe they can get it going. I think the first quarter, the first half is going to be really big for the offense because they just need some confidence, and that's why that first drive against New Orleans was so important because once that, turned into an interception, that kind of took the air out of the offense for the rest of the game.
Tennessee's been a slow starter. 12 through the first games, they've had 12 drives. They've had 8 punts, 8 3-and-outs, 8 punts during that. So they've struggled early.
Is it too early to say that's Dolphin-esque?
But look, for the Dolphins, to me, for them to have the type of offense that they want to have, they've got to run the ball. They've got to be able to run the football because running the football, especially for Jay Cutler, leads to play action. It brings play action into the game. It'll bring that safety up a little bit so he can't stand back there. And then you've got the opportunity to go over the top. But they've got to be consistent running the football early on in football games if they want to open up pass. They can't run the football. They're not going to be able to throw the ball because the defense, then they can blitz, then they can put their ears back and really come to the quarter at Jay Cutler. And Jay's done a good job at times being able to extend plays, moving around the pocket. But there are other times when he's just gotten swamped back there and he really can't do much. I know a lot of people were talking about last week about Jay Cutler as being a problem in the game. I really don't. Certainly that first touch, the first play at the end zone, the interception on what should have been a deep fade route that was thrown a little too short. That kind of blew the whole thing. But beyond that, I think Jay Cutler basically played as well as he could play in that game with what he had going for him. Receivers weren't getting open. Running game wasn't going anywhere. So he was forced to just, drop back and throw the football. And that certainly played right into the hands of what the New Orleans Saints wanted to do.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to something you said about the running game. Jay Ajayi right now is getting about half of his yards after contact.
Yes. Yep.
That tells me that he's getting hit right at the line of scrimmage.
Or behind the line of scrimmage.
Behind the line of scrimmage, or even 1 or 2 yards up the line of scrimmage. Very different from last year where he was able to get to that second level pretty consistently on those outside stretch plays. And now that's not happening. A lot of teams are trying to take that away, especially the outside zone stretch that really worked a lot for him last year when he had those 200-yard games. So, there's a lot of things that were working last year that aren't necessarily working this year, and they just got to counter and figure it out. But, yeah, you're right. If they can't get the running game going, making this team one-dimensional, even though they have the receivers, but expecting Jay Cutler to win in shootouts against guys like Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers and some of the quarterbacks that they're going to face later in the year, that's not the formula for success.
I think defenses understand, and they want to get Jay Ajayi outside. And so you got ends getting up the field, you got linebackers getting up the field. And every time he's tried to get out, he's had to give ground to make ground if he's going to make it around the corner. And it makes it difficult to get around the corner when you've got to give ground in a situation like that. So, but to me, that's part of the offensive line and what they've got to do. To me, one of the biggest things that they need to get better at, I don't think they're going to get better on offense unless that offensive line starts playing better. And I'm not talking about just strictly the guard position. You know, Tunsil hasn't played great. Juwan James has had his struggles out there. And those guys need to play up to the level of expectation and the way they should be playing the game right now.
And it seems like they can't get all 5 guys playing well at the same time. Juwan James had a good first 2 games. He struggled last week. Laremy Tunsil had struggles his first 2 games. He actually played decent football last week. They need to get everybody going at the same time, at least in one facet of the game, whether it's run or in pass protection. It just seems like they can't get all 5 guys playing well in either facet right now. So, Adam Gase said that eventually he might have to consider lineup changes on offense. But really, I look at this roster, I don't really see where he can make lineup changes. There isn't enough quality depth on the offensive line for him to say, okay, I'm going to take out an offensive tackle and put someone in at right tackle, put someone in at left tackle, or I'm going to change the center or the guard. I just don't really see where that can happen. At wide receiver, you're not going to necessarily play Jakeem Grant or Leonte Carew over the 3 receivers that they have. Running back, Jay Ajayi is not the problem. He's playing decent football. He's just getting hit, right at the line of scrimmage too often to where he can't really get in a rhythm. So, it's just the players that they have are the players they're going to have to stick with. You just got to coach them better, just got to get them going, get them on the same page if they're going to turn it around.
Yeah, no doubt. And as I said, I'm really looking for this week to be an opportunity to kind of open things up, have a good week. This team needs to get a little confidence back in themselves.
Yeah, Mike Pouncey brought up an interesting point in the locker room and said that the offense was fiery in practice today. We only get to see the first 30, 40 minutes of practice or so, but he said, there was some scrappiness, there was some, some chippiness in practice. The offense is really trying to reassert itself.
I would expect that. I mean, you're in a football team that's losing games and disappointing and playing poorly. It's one thing if you're out there and you're battling and you got a game and it's 20, 21, 24, and you're playing and you're in the game and you lose by a field, but they haven't even been able to get into games. Since the Charger game. They've just been they stay in the game, and eventually it's like the tide just kind of rolls over them because the defense can't.
Yeah, you can't expect
70 plays last week to 45 or 47, and you can't have a defense out there, much like the week before. Hey, you're watching the Audible presented by UMiami Health. If you want to send your questions in, you can send them in via Facebook. You can send them in via Periscope. Just go to the bottom of that message bar and send your questions in, and we'll go ahead and take them. Let's go ahead and take some questions. What do you say, James?
Let's do it.
Duke Dennis, how would you evaluate Charles Harris? I was watching Charles last week, and he's getting his opportunities in there. There were 1 or 2 times last week that he was close to quarterback. And even I think one time he made him step up a little bit, and that created some problems. But and he's frustrated. He's frustrated.
He's in a tough spot.
The times I've seen him get close, and then you look at him afterwards, and you can just see the frustration on his face. And it's funny. It's not funny, but I mean, Charles Harris during the OTAs and the mini camps. I mean, he was getting all the attention. Now he's an unknown. Now you haven't. This is the first time we've heard anybody ask about him since the season began.
That's a good point.
And he's become kind of a non-factor, kind of a mystery guy in there for you. But I think he's got to start playing better. I think the whole defensive front when it comes to pass rushing, I see a lot of guys just kind of just trying to bull rush all the time. They got to get back to the spins. They got to get back to the things that make them better. Get on the corner, get on the edge instead of just.
I saw that too. You're right.
And you know what? Being a defensive end, having played that position for a long time, it's easy to fall into that trap. Of just saying, "Hey, look, I'm a bull rush this guy a little, make a move on him, and the next thing you know, you're just not getting anywhere. Maybe you get close, but they've got to be more dynamic in their pass rush. I guess is the way that I would say it, and I think Charles Harris is along that line. But I don't think you can look at Charles Harris right now and try to give him an evaluation based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and I'll make one point about Charles Harris. He's in a tough spot because he's a first-round pick that's asked to do one specific thing. In a limited role at that. So he might play 10, 15 snaps, and his job is to sack the quarterback. It's not like a Cameron Wake who's going to play 40 snaps. So maybe he gets a sack in those 40 snaps. He has to get a sack in 10 snaps. That's not easy to do, even if he's coming in on pass rush situations, especially as a rookie. So it's going to take time for him to develop. I haven't seen enough from him at this point. Haven't been all that impressed at this point from what I've seen in the games. But with a limited number of reps, he's going to have to come of age, in that circumstance. And I just think that's a tough circumstance to do.
Yeah, you take a defensive end in this league that's an every down player.
Yeah,
he's going to get 60 snaps somewhere around there.
Yep.
And look, if he comes away with 1 sack in a game, that's
a good game.
That's a good game.
Yep.
So now you're asking a guy to go in there 8 or 10 times and come up with a sack. It makes it difficult, but But he's got to earn his time too. The other thing about it is I've always been a kind of a rhythm player. You need to get into the pace of the game. You need to get a feel for that offensive tackle that you're rushing against, and you need to feel where he's leaning, where you can kind of push him a little bit. And you can't do you do some of that on run plays, and you can take advantage of it on pass plays. But when you're just coming in for a handful of plays, very tough to get a good feel for that guy you're playing against. Facebook, Henry Wells, do you see Ray Malaluga playing this Sunday? I do.
He's close.
I
He's
think
getting
this
closer.
is the game.
Yep.
I think he practiced last week, practiced pretty well, practiced full practice last week. Talked to some people before the game. They said, look, we just need to give him another week. So I think that Ray Malaluga will probably get an opportunity. I don't know if it's going to be 10 plays. I don't know if it's going to be something like that.
Probably not as a starter.
But whatever way, even if he were to be, even if he were to take over from Mike Hall and play, he'd be the guy coming out on the nickel package, much like Mike Hall is now that Lawrence Timmons has gotten back into the lineup. So on nickel situations, Hall is the guy that would come out. And I think Ray Malaluga would be in the same situation, which would probably give him 10 to 12 plays.
I was going to say the exact same thing you just said. Limited playing time, probably not going to start. But to get in there and get his feet wet, this is more of a long-term play. Maybe he can take over for Mike Hall in the 6th game, in the 7th game, in the 8th game around mid-season. But with hamstring injuries, those are always tricky because one wrong move and you can tweak it again and be out for another 2 or 3 weeks. So I think the Dolphins are being extra cautious with that. So when they do have him in, that they have him available for the long haul. So I do think he gets his feet wet this week, but don't expect a big role.
That being said, you look across the line of scrimmage, Marcus Mariota, who's as dangerous as any quarterback running the football and throwing the football. He's got one of those slight hamstring pulls, and you wonder how they're going to go about that. They need to win as much as anybody else, but then you come to that question, much like you talk about Ray Malaluga. Excuse me. Do you put him out there and risk him maybe pulling that hamstring? But that's their decision to make. Certainly not. Not ours.
They get paid a lot of money. They have a training staff that gets paid a ton of money to do that. But I think that's why he didn't play last week, even though he practiced every day last week, just to give him that extra week to make sure that he doesn't have that pull. But you mentioned Mariota. 235 rushing yards last year against the Dolphins. I would be shocked if they don't at least try to implement that same formula, whether Mariota is in the game or not, whether it's Castle or Mariota. I expect them to try to run the ball. It's going to be interesting because Miami's run defense is very good.
It's been very good,
And I don't know if it's a farce or I don't know if it's legit.
Look, to me, I think it's legit. You look at
it's been 3 games.
Look at William Hayes. He's doing the job he was brought in to do. He's been a big asset against the running game, especially now with Lawrence Timmons back in there. He gives you another on the other side. He gives you another big body guy, and Sue's going to do what Sue does, and you got the 2 rookies, Vincent and Gottschall, who are doing a good job when they get in there. So I don't think it's smoke and mirrors with those guys in the way they're playing run defense. I think they knew in the offseason they need to improve their run defense, and I think we're seeing the results of the players they brought in, and Matt Burke, as he said, we just need to tighten things up a little bit, and I think you can see that coming to fruition out there.
And like you said, it's been 3 games, so I'm kind of convinced at this point. I'm getting to the point of being convinced after seeing 16 bad games last year, 3 good games this year of quality run defense. But the Titans are going to test them, so this will be the real deal because the Titans are going to come in. They're going to use that physical offensive line. They got a lot of first-round picks in that offensive line. See if they could bully you. See if they can run over you. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they – which side of the football wins
this
that battle.
This is one of those matchups that you look at, strength versus strength. Their offensive line is very good. You look at DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry, almost got 400 yards rushing between those 2 guys so far. 2 big, powerful backs that can, especially Henry can get outside and take it the distance if he has to. So that is going to be a very good test. And I always like to see the matchup, strength versus strength. And I think we're going to see a little bit of that out there. Facebook, El Chapo. Hey, James, whose play has surprised you the most so far during this season?
Whose play has surprised me the most this season? Oh, man. Let me think about this. Positive or negative? I can go either way with this. Man, that's tough. Let me throw that to you. Let me think about it.
Okay, players most
positive or negative? Surprised me the most.
Yeah, that's.
I'll go on the negative side.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to defer on that one a little bit and think about it a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'll go on the negative side. I thought Rashad Jones would have a bigger impact in the first 3 games than he's had, and I noticed even dating to the preseason and training camp, he's taken bad angles. He's missed some arm tackles. 2 years ago, Rashad Jones was the best tackler on his team, and it wasn't even close. He had 135 tackles, very good at laying the boom and making the game-saving tackle in the open field. He was as fundamental and a hard-hitting tackler as this team has had. I hadn't seen that at this point, with him. And the run defense has been good. Rashad Jones still has made some plays, but the consistency as far as his tackling and his angles, I just haven't seen it. So I would say that's been a surprise because I'm so used to seeing him play at a consistently high level that now his play has kind of been up and down. So maybe it's a product of not being on the field for so long, the shoulder surgery, things like that. Maybe it's going to take him a half a season to really get back in the groove. But I thought he would make a bigger impact in the first 3 games.
I got you. Another one, Facebook, Randy Messer. I would take Tebow over Kaepernick. Well, okay. Good for you.
Has nothing to do with the Dolphins right now.
Facebook, Steve Morsian. Do you guys think Cutler is getting too much heat for the offense? Well, look, I think that certainly the game he played in New York was just bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that was bad. Jay Cutler, maybe worse Jay Cutler you've ever seen. I haven't seen a quarterback throw more balls way off target
inaccurate.
than
You're reading my mind. You're reading my mind.
I mean, it's one thing to miss a receiver. It's another thing to miss him by 4 or 5 yards.
Yep.
And we certainly saw some of that. And I just don't think he was comfortable back there. I think the pressure was bothering him. He's throwing off his back foot and kind of flinging the ball out there. I thought we saw more zip on the football against New Orleans, stepping into the ball, throwing the ball with a little more authority. So I would say, to me, 2 out of the 3 games, I could take the play of Jay Cutler for 2 out of the 3 games. The game against the Jets, he can't have many of those games this season. Yeah,
and it's interesting. I'm getting an education on the difference of quarterback between Jay Cutler and Ryan Tannehill. There's like little
night and day.
Little things, like 20 little things that you see between the two, and it's interesting because you're seeing them run the same offense. So you kind of have apples to apples comparison. But yeah, I mean, Jay Cutler has different strengths. He's not necessarily using all of them. Something that I've seen, this is a very small detail, maybe you agree or disagree with this, compared to Ryan Tannehill, Jay Cutler has a bit of a self-preservation button with him to where if the rush is coming, he'll cover up maybe that extra second or half second before taking a sack, where Tannehill, even if he knows he's going to get his head knocked off, he will stand tall in the pocket and get his head knocked off to make that 15-yard completion. And I think that has played a little bit of a difference, not a little bit, played a decent amount of difference in this offense and why you're not seeing some of the bigger plays, the 15-yard completions, the 20-yard completions, where Tannehill will take the hit, take the hard hit to get that 15, 20-yard play, where Jay will cover up, live the play another day. I don't know which one is right or wrong, which one he's being coached to do. He is 34. He is older than Ryan. He's taking more hits. But I have noticed that self-preservation button that Ryan Tannehill didn't have, that Jay Cutler does have, and I think that's made a difference in this offense. I
think the other thing too, you got Jay, who's an ultra conservative quarterback. Right? He's all about not making mistakes. I'm talking about Tannehill.
Oh, Tannehill. Okay,
Ryan Tannehill. Ultra conservative quarterback, doesn't want to make the mistake. And sometimes I think that's been what people are frustrated. Been frustrated about Ryan Tannehill. Now last year, still had that conservative nature to him, but brought the long game into his repertoire and made that a little better. I think Jay is just the opposite. He's a little more of a loosey-goosey kind of, take my shots, this and that kind of a guy, and maybe not adhering as tightly to some of the small details of the offense as Ryan Tannehill would. Yeah,
and Tannehill, they went 10-6 last year. Tannehill had 8 of those wins. But Tannehill didn't really win you many of those games. But he didn't lose you any of those games as well. Jay is going to win you some games, and he's going to lose you some games. That's been the telltale sign of his career. So far, they're 1-2. But, with the way Jay plays quarterback, at some point they're going to put it on his arm, and it's either going to come out positive or negative, where Tannehill, he was going to be in the middle and, let the other players around him win.
I think we all knew when they signed Jay Cutler that you were going to see some good stuff out of Jay Cutler, and you're going to see some stuff that's going to scratch your head. You're going to scratch your head
Yep.
and go, why did he do that? Because it's just his history. He'll throw the ball into coverage.
Yep.
He loves his arm, knows that he can get the ball in there, and at times he tries to squeeze it, and it turns into a turnover for you. But you knew that going in. And so I think what we're seeing is really the Jay Cutler that most people expected. You're going to see good, you're going to see average, and then sometimes you're going to see just bad.
Yeah, Tannehill would have never thrown that interception in the end zone,
No.
That you saw in London. But there's also throws that Jay Cutler's going to make that Tannehill probably wouldn't make during the season. So you got to live with it either way. That's what the coaches chose to do. And I've been critical of the signing to begin with. I thought with the Cutler signing from the beginning that the ceiling for this team was probably 7 or 8 wins. I don't know if that's necessarily worth $10 million, but we'll see how it plays out. I mean, they're 1-2 so far, so I'm not going to claim victory on that, just yet. But I really think the ceiling for this team, with the quarterback being that up and down, is probably about 8 wins.
You're watching the Audible presented by UMiami Health. Kim Bokamper, James Walker with us here. Let's move on here. Glenwood Tiger. Please use Drake more. Well, I like Drake, but
you're going to take Jay off the field?
I'm not going to take Jay off the field.
Yeah,
to me, Jay, you get Jay going, and Jay, to me, the payoff with Jay comes in the second half.
Yep.
Because he beats guys down, breaks tackles, and in the second half you see guys they're just not so quick to stick their head in there.
Yep.
They'll kind of throw the arm out there and maybe not get their body in front of him. And if you go back last year, Jay had probably Jay's biggest runs last year lengthwise came in the second half of football games.
When the defense was worn down. You're right. And there's a reason why Jay Ajayi got frustrated in the first half last week in London, because he knows exactly what you're saying. He needs to get in rhythm to beat down the defense and wear it down for him to have those big games in the second half. So to take him out early and do all that they took him out on third down this time, that's something that Jay had worked tirelessly this offseason, is catching the ball, being a 3-down back. So I can see why his frustration is. But so, they have some depth at running back, but Jay Ajayi is far from the problem. If I can list, 10 offensive problems,
he's down the bottom.
Yeah, he's not even in the conversation, in my opinion.
Don't get me wrong. I love Kenyon Drake.
He's a good player.
I like what he brings in. He's a good change of pace guy because he's got that breakaway speed. I like Damian Williams when he gets the opportunity. He always seems to make plays. So
he does it right.
I certainly like all 3 running backs they have, but you've got to feed Jay Ajayi because that's where his strength is, and that's where you get the benefit of him late in games. Periscope, Lamel Ortiz, is Cordray Tankersley starting because Maxwell is still hurt? I think Cordray was going to start that game anyway.
I agree with that.
I don't think there was any question about that. I think over the first couple games, there was disappointment in the way that Maxwell's played. And if you remember, Maxwell got sat down last year for the same reason and came back and became a more physical player that they were looking for. So, maybe they feel this is a situation. But I think the situation right now really is that they want to see Cordray. They want to give him the opportunity to learn how to play in this league. And as much as they're not looking past this year, I think when you look at Cordray, they're looking for him to get the play so that when he comes back next year, then he comes in as your starting corner, and you got X on one side, and you got Tankersley on the other side. Excuse me. If he continues to improve, I think certainly that's the future in the cornerback position.
And I asked Cordray this week when he found out he was going to start. And he said, Coach Lou, the defensive backs coach, told him midweek to get ready to play a ton of reps. So he knew Wednesday or Thursday that he was going to play a prominent role, if not start, on Sunday. So he would have started regardless of Maxwell's injury, as far as I'm concerned, and he's still the starter now. Now, Maxwell may get another chance this week. Xavier Howard didn't practice today after his injury from Sunday. So, how will Maxwell respond after being benched? He did a good job responding last year. Let's see what happens this year.
Well, and the one thing, too, he was, Coach Gaze was asked, is Tankersley going to be is he a starter? And he said, yes, he is. No hesitation. So kind of tells you a little bit about where their mindset is on that. I got some injuries here from practice today. Are these all non-practice DNPs? First injury report. But they didn't practice today. There you go, Leon. There you go. I kind of figured it was an injury report I was looking at there, but I didn't see. Limited, didn't practice. So none of these guys practiced today. Terrence Fide's shoulder, Xavier Howard, you talked about him with his shoulder. Mike Hall had a shoulder in the game the other day. Byron's got that hamstring. Jordan Phillips' ankle. He's got that high ankle sprain. he's still dealing with it. Mike Pouncey with his hip, who only practices 1 day a week anyway, so that's really nothing to be concerned about. Scott J. Perrin, hey, Bo, do you think the guard play will be better this week? I'm not overly concerned with Bushrod.
Yeah,
I think he could have played better this week. But Bush to me is a football player.
Yep, he'll figure it out.
And he's going to figure it out. And even if he's not playing great, he's going to give you max effort, and he's going to try to put a helmet on somebody on each and every play. I'm a little concerned in that left guard position because you've gone with two guys, with Steen and Jesse Davis, and quite frankly, I don't think either one of them has played up to the level that you need to play in order to have this offense be as effective as you want it to be.
And it's hard for those guys to get in rhythm as well.
Well, because they're sharing time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're coming in and out, you know, every 2 series, something like that, and you're trying to get in rhythm, you're trying to get a feel for the defensive tackles that you're blocking and the picking up the blitzes and the communication and things like that. So, personally, I think they would be better off picking a guard, whoever that is, whether it's Steen, Jesse Davis, whoever it is, sticking with that left guard and letting him sink or swim, letting him get in sync with, especially with Mike Pouncey, the center, the communication with Pouncey, the communication with Laramie Tunsil on the left side. You can't keep switching that player out
I'm with you.
and expecting them to play at a high level.
Look, not only that, but if you're the guy that's in there, there's a little bitty that keeps looking over your shoulder. When am I coming out? When am I?
What if they make a mistake?
You make a mistake, and or am I coming right?
Exactly.
That's a tough. That mentally is a tough thing to deal with in a game time situation. It's one thing from week to week, but when you're in a game and you have a bad series, and all of a sudden they yank you out, and then you don't know if you're going when or if you're going to go back in, and so that's a tough thing to do. It takes a certain special kind of guy to be able to do that and play at a high level.
Yeah, you can't coach the offensive line like the defensive line. Now the defensive line, you can rotate guys in and out, and guys can they're used to it. They're fresh. They can get in rhythm even with fewer plays. But the offensive line needs to be a cohesive unit. They need to be in the entire game unless there's an injury, and it seems like they're kind of confused in that aspect.
The D-line, the guy jumps offside and he comes right off.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
get out, bring somebody else.
Especially you're a young kid, you don't have many opportunities. Kyle Belden, do you think Cutler's body language is rubbing off on other players? I understand what people see. Yeah, I understand the way they interpret Jay's body language, but what I've seen of Jay Cutler, and I wasn't around Jay Cutler when he was in Chicago. I wasn't around Jay Cutler when he was in Denver, but I've been around Jay Cutler here. I see a guy that's embraced this football team. I see a guy that he's engaged with the players in the football team. He's not a guy that's standing over by himself and not talking. I think he likes the youth of this football team. I think it's energized him a little bit. So no, I wouldn't look at his body language and try to make something out of it. Try to determine because of his body language whether he's interested in playing or not playing.
Yeah, I haven't seen that as an issue here. I think Adam Gase has a big reason for that. Adam Gase giving Jay the stamp of approval, working with Jay on everything, on the field, off the field, everything like that. I just don't see that as an issue here. Now, the Wildcat play, I know has been very talked about. Yeah. Did he have to have his hands on his hips? I think if it was any other player, it probably wouldn't be talked about because it's Jay Cutler.
It's magnified.
Exactly. It's magnified.
There he goes again.
Yeah.
Is what you get. Yeah.
Exactly. But, that was one play. I don't want to overrate one play out of 3 games. But other than that, so far, I haven't really seen that be an issue. But I will be interested to see how things progress, especially if this team struggles, if this offense struggles, because the quarterback, you need leadership from the quarterback position. Yep. And if this offense is struggling, Jay's going to have to step up and be a leader, which is something he's been criticized about in the past.
Facebook, last one here, Stevie Jackson Jr. What's up with Stephon Anthony? Well, I think that with certainly with Lawrence Timmons coming back, Ray Malaluga getting healthy, I think he's going to be relegated to be a special teams guy. I think that's where his life is right now.
Yeah, haven't really found a role for him. They said he can play all 3 spots, but really there's no space available.
Who are you going to bump? Who's he going to bump?
Yeah, exactly.
Look, he's behind the 3 starters now.
Kiko.
Malaluga, Kiko. I mean, he's your 5th guy probably right now.
Yeah, and the linebackers are doing the job against the run. They need to get a little better against the pass, but they're doing the job against the run, so there's really no reason for them to really mess that up and try to fit them in.
James, always a pleasure, my man.
Always fun.
Again,
Fast. I always think this is fast.
At James Walker NFL. You can read his stuff all the time on ESPN.com, covering the Miami Dolphins. Always good stuff from James. Always appreciate you having you here. This has been the Audible presented by UMiami Health. Glad you guys joined us here today. We'll be back again on Friday. It's Friday football on the Audible. We're going to be at St. Thomas Aquinas High School, 6 p.m. Just come off their first shutout in like 50 years or whatever it is. 300 and something games they got shut out in Arizona. So you can bet that they'll be fired up and ready to play. And we'll be fired up to be there here with the Audible. And we'll also be presented by UMiami Health while we're out the football game. So that'll be even better. That's going to do it for the show. We'll see you on Friday. Have a good couple days. We'll see you then.